Hey guys, welcome to another episode of the Every Arkansan podcast. This week we've got my dear friend John Ripa sharing his story of how a bike wreck turned into a tremendous ministry that's helping tons of people across Arkansas. Well, my friend John Ripa, I'm so glad that we could just find this time to hang out and just talk about life and talk about ministry together. So, tell us a little bit, where are you from? Because you're not native Arkansan. So.
I would like to go on record that I am originally from the New York area, but having lived here now officially 20 years, I believe that makes me an Arkansan. It's only fair. And I consider myself an Arkansan.
Well, and you do live in the middle of the woods.
True. Very true. Very true.
So you have to drive into Little Rock to get here.
No doubt. And the word town has entered my vocabulary. We're going to town. So things have changed.
Things have changed.
For the good.
And you moved here for Axiom.
Yes.
You were an executive with them. I mean, data, information, all this other stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But that's not what you do anymore. So,
no.
I mean, it's so interesting. I shared this about my dad a lot. He was very successful. And he just realized I wasn't very significant. And what you're doing kind of reminds me a lot of that. It's just, you don't have to. You just love it. So what kind of led you from that corporate world to what you're doing now? What was that kind of path?
Well, it was a difficult road to travel. It's funny how life changes, but for me, all it took was a pothole. And I remind myself of that. And it simply was, I was an avid bicycle rider, rode about 25 miles a day. And one day I had missed and decided to go out at night and ride, and didn't see the pothole. It was the perfect size. I hit it, went over the handlebars, and my life was changed forever. So I don't know how many surgeries I've had now, but they're all spine related. And they recently determined that I have degenerative disc disease and spinal stenosis. So I'm not sure if I'm supposed to be happy about that. If the point was, well, you would have been screwed up anyway, or, but...
Thanks for being so encouraging, doctor.
Yeah, but when that happened, I am forever grateful to Axiom because they gave me 6 months to try to get better. And I tried so hard. I mean, I followed every direction and some. I mean, literally, I was, if you remember, there was the YMCA up on Sandpack. Mm-hmm. And I used to go in that pool and walk as fast as I could back and forth. And the whole objective was to get physically better, to go back to work. And when that time came and I tried to do it, it was tough because I saw the writing on the wall. I started to realize, wow, I can't sit for all that long. I can't stand for all that long. And how many people can work where they are lying on their side? It's not going to work out too well. And I also found that my attention span was affected because of pain. So they were so kind in that I think they knew that, but allowed me to make the call and say, it's not going to work out. And I will forever be indebted because I know that had they acted like other companies often do, I would have been crushed. I would have been absolutely crushed. So that's kind of what started it. And but for me, you know how there's that, we all joke about, well, if I win the lottery, I'm not going to go to work the next day. Well, I don't think that that's true because I was frightened. I had no idea what to do with myself. And it took a dream. And I know that I am certain that God uses dreams to communicate what he would like us to do. And I had a dream, and it was kind of crazy. We were at a campfire, a bunch of guys sitting around, and they were all complimenting me about this work that I did up at a ministry called Roland's Crisis Closet. It was rural ministry, food and clothing. And they were really patting me on the back over the top. And I was soaking it in like there was no tomorrow. And it was kind of disgusting. I was embarrassed of myself in a dream. I'm not sure what that means, but then one person spoke, and everybody paid attention to him because he was special. He was the man. And he stopped and he said, yeah, you did some good things out there, but I'd like to ask you a question. What did you do for all those people that you saw downtown? What did you do for them? And I hemmed and hawed because the answer was nothing. Mm-hmm. And I remember I said, well, I give them money. He stopped and he said, well, can I ask you a question? Do you give them money because you truly want to help them and make a difference? Or you give them money hoping that they will go away? The answer was the latter. Yeah. And I woke up panicked. But you know what? I knew what I was supposed to do. I didn't know exactly what, but I knew exactly what I was supposed to do. And it started out very funky. You know, I didn't know any better, so load up the car with sandwiches and drinks, and I would go downtown. In fact, I think that's where I met you one time, way back when, I don't know how many years ago, but I had my sandwiches and drinks, and you had, I think, blankets or something like that, and that's where we met. But that was the beginning of it. And the turning point for me was the church that I go to today. Back at that time, we decided to host a warming shelter, and it was that really wicked winter. And the shelter stayed open, I think it was for a month, because there was snow on the ground and it was cold. It was very controversial in the beginning. The city was not particularly happy with us. But in the end, they became very supportive. And what was nice was people were coming from all over to help keep the warming center going, from all different churches. And that's where I met a few people who had the same view as I did, that there was this void, that there wasn't any housing available for people who were seriously considering making a big change in their life. So that's really how it got started.
Yeah, and that ministry is called Rock of Hope.
Yes. Yep.
And it's been so interesting because it literally is you and a few other people that are just like-minded, and you're not going after it from a standpoint of I've got all these degrees and credentials to solve all these problems. It's just like, okay, let's get in the house and let's start taking the steps. And so in doing that, what are some of the things that you kind of learned in that process? Because I think homelessness, or people that are experiencing homelessness, it scares a lot of people. And I remember working downtown Little Rock in the investment banking business, and I would look across the street and I'd say, a homeless guy's coming my direction. I better cross over here to avoid. But what is it about that you learned that was just like, holy cow, I've been wrong for the past 20, 30 years?
Well, when I worked in New York City, homelessness is it's chronic there, and they have subway stations. And they would be filled with homeless people, and you would kind of step over them. And like many people, I had this opinion formulated that it was their fault and if they only got a job. So I'm not sure exactly where I learned that from, but it was a firm belief. Well, when I started speaking with the homeless, one human being to another, I learned that that is not true, and it is an unfair statement. And the percentage of bad homeless people is equal to the percentage of bad white-collared people. And most of the time when you get back to what happened, you find that there was something that took place in their life that was fairly tragic, that put them on a trajectory that I know for me personally, most of the times I make an assessment. What do I think I would look like if I were placed in that situation? Most of the time I conclude I would be homeless, that I wouldn't be able to handle it, that it's a very difficult, set of circumstances. Right. So I think that was one of the biggest things that I learned. And that's what really made the difference, because when you start to realize that it's just a bad set of cards that were dealt, and that makes you look at that person's problem significantly differently than you would have in the past. And so I don't assume anything any longer. I don't.
And it's an important thing to learn, because we do. We assume things based upon our life experiences and the things that we think are the way it should be or whatever. And it's, for so many people, it's not that it's wrong, it's just different. And we got to get that and grasp that. And so in doing this, you guys bring in someone into a home, and you're providing a furnished home. You're providing a home that you guys would live in.
Yes.
It's not some slumlord type mentality. You're giving them dignity in that. And what's that process after that? Getting to know them, the counseling, what goes on after that?
Well, I think that, we've had so many iterations over the years, because, you mentioned it from the beginning that none of us are educated for this field. We didn't come to it with experience. We just came to it with a common belief that something needed to be done, and we wanted to give a try at trying to do something. We found out quickly that because we didn't know anything, that our goal was really to meet other organizations that were experts in a particular field, and just simply ask them if one of our friends, and we don't use the word client, and we just call them friends, and if they have a need, can they come to seek the help that they can provide? And we just started looking at it from the standpoint of what are the recurring issues that we find, and we would line up organizations that specialized in that field. So I guess, in the corporate world, we'd call that outsourcing, except we don't have any money, so we can't pay for it, and so it's free outsourcing. But that's how we try to do it. And every person's different. And I think what happens often is different people get closer to different people that we serve. And I've had some real special relationships with people that are ongoing now, people that we worked with years ago, and thankfully their life is much better than it was. And I talk to them all the time, hang out with them sometimes, so it's pretty cool when that happens.
We always say around here is if it weren't for the relationships in our life, where would we be?
Yeah.
And I look at so many of the men and women who are experiencing homelessness in my path, and so many of them are doing life alone.
Mm.
And there's so many great resources out there for them.
Mm-hmm.
But they need someone that's going to be that friend, that mentor, that relationship that's going to say, "Hey, it's all good. Let's work through this."
Yeah. Yeah.
So, what is in your kind of experience? What kind of things are like critical in that process when you're forming that relationship and when you're doing that to really help them versus talk at them,
Mm-hmm.
if that makes sense?
Sure.
I mean, because I think so many times we've got the answers. Just
Mm-hmm.
listen to me, versus help them walk through that.
Mm-hmm. Well, I find that one of the best things that you can do is if a person is, for example, dealing with a problem and you personally have experience in it, meaning in your own personal life. And I will go on record, I was no angel. So I have countless mistakes that I can point to as a reference point as to what not to do. But I think that when you make an effort to leverage your points of vulnerability, the relationship tends to blossom because you are thought of as an equal. And, my experience in ministry is all too often we don't mean to do this, but when we're delivering the service, the way it goes down, the average person being served is going to immediately feel inferior because you're giving and they're taking. And, I just, that's a tough putt for somebody to really feel good about it.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that anything that we can do to talk about problems that we've had and to use them to illustrate what not to do is a great way to get that relationship started. It is definitely not talking about your past in a boastful way, here's what I did, that type of thing. So I think, I think the most important thing is to be real. And I think it, to share our faith is important, but there's a time for that. And sometimes, again, a lot of things that we don't mean to do, but it happens, is sometimes it almost seems like what's being presented to the person is, well, if you subscribe to the faith I do, you can have this magical thing over here. And that's not to say that that's what's happening. But if you're on the other side of the table and you're in need, that's what the perception is. And it took a long time for me to understand that, So, you ask God to give you the prompting when is the appropriate time.
And one of the things I've learned is that most of those people that I know that are experiencing homelessness can probably quote the Bible better than me,
Mm-hmm.
because they've kind of been beat over the head
You
for
betcha.
so long that they know, oh, I've got to jump through this hoop, raise this hand, say this thing or whatever, because all I'm really here, I need that meal.
Yep. Yeah.
I got to get through today, or I need another sleeping bag or whatever it is, versus a genuine experience of, holy cow, those people just love me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Oh, that's what Jesus meant.
Yeah.
Love.
Mm-hmm.
This conditional versus unconditional type
Yeah.
mentality. So what's y'all's hope really for those that are coming through the process? I mean, beyond just, okay, we've provided them a safe place that they can kind of get back on their feet. What's kind of the hope there for those relationships beyond that?
There are some things that I find particularly thrilling. And, since we're not an educational program, I can't really use the word graduate, but you know what I mean, that we've done what we can, and it's time for them to move to the next level. But there are some key ingredients that when certain things happen, you can smile and know they're on their way. One is that they restore relationships with family. All too often, just bad things happened in the past, and the relationships are fractured and they need to be repaired. And one of the things is to encourage them. Take the first step. Take the first step. But, that's often a good sign. Having a banking relationship. It is very important. And that is something that it takes a little doing. But when they have that checking account and they are starting to pay things using a stamp or whatever, a real home run is online, but that's a piece of it, that they're handling the financial aspects of life in the ways that companies would like us to. I would say that they're holding down a job, but that's not good enough, because a lot of times what happens is a person identifies a way to make a living so that they can get out from under all the things that they're facing. But it is wonderful when you see them identify what their dream is and they're truly going after it. So it's not so much that they get that dream job, but they now are working towards that. That it won't just be a job, it's going to be something important in their life. Those types of ingredients tell you they're on their way. And, it's hard to predict who gets to that point. We don't, sometimes you get very surprised, but it is a wonderful, wonderful feeling, when you see that person stepping out and, getting it done. And, that they're going to be out there making a difference, because when they do that, they essentially become the best people on earth to help other people get through what they went through, because they're legit. No matter how you slice or dice it, I'm not legit. I didn't go through it. But those people, you hope that they will devote their time to others. And I gotta say, most of them do.
So, looking back, what's one of the most memorable things that really touched your heart in all of this that you guys are doing?
Okay. I have one in particular that I share with people so that they understand clearly that people who have had a past does not mean that they are bad people or can't do wonderful things. And as we talked about, I'm not from Arkansas, and I have no family members in this state whatsoever. So it makes life a little bit different for me and my family. And years ago, my mother was diagnosed with lung cancer, and sadly, it was the type that, it was just far gone. And she made a decision that she wanted to have her remaining time on earth spent with her family, and just that it be a good time, and that she was ready to go. She knew where she was going. And my mom, it was wonderful to see it, but she was looking forward to going to heaven. Like, she had a very clear view of that. And so sometimes it made me upset because it was like, why are you hurrying up? But I get it. But in any event, we were challenged because we had to jump on a flight to get there because we didn't know how much time she had. We had 2 dogs that couldn't be put on planes, and we had a house that needed to be taken care of, and we didn't have really anybody to help us. And there were 2 guys that I had become very good friends with that were homeless. And they were kind of like Oscar and Felix from The Odd Couple, just a more contemporary version of it. But they overheard my talking about this dilemma. And immediately, one of them came to me and said, I used to be a dog instructor. And if you'd like, I can take care of your dogs, no problem whatsoever. However you want to do it, I can come to the house, or if you want me to take them, consider it done. And I was like, wow, that's awesome. And then all of a sudden I'm thinking, well, and I asked my wife, you think it'd be okay to have them just live in our house while we're gone? And she said, sure, and she said, that's a wonderful idea. And then I shared it with a couple of other people, and they thought we were the craziest people on earth, but we didn't rightly care, and we needed to get to Mom right away. So I asked them, I said, do you think you could stay at my house? And this is a pretty big ask because we don't know how long we're going to be gone for. And they said yes, immediately, without question. And we just gave them the car keys and just said, go to it, man. And but what I found was this, is once I got to New Jersey and I was with Mom, do you know who called me the most to find out how my family was doing? Those 2 guys. And they would give me a little report about Hummer and Pluto, my dogs, which meant a lot. And just said, everything's okay. How's your family doing? And we prayed for you, and I knew that they did, and I was like, wow, man, this is something else. And once my mom passed, they knew that our return was going to come. And I remember they kept asking me over and over again, when are you coming back? When are you coming back? When are you coming back? And I was like, why? It's weird, And then I have to admit this, and I feel ashamed for it, but then I got worried. What's going on in my house? But then I was like, nah, no. And I was like, oh, maybe, so we finally had our flight. And the day of the flight, they were really fixated on, did you get to the airport? Yes. I was thinking, man, this is kind of weird, And then they called when they knew that the flight had landed. And I was like, this is really crazy. And then they were like, is your flight, to Little Rock on time? Yes. And it's landing, when they said yes. Yeah. They said, so you'll be home, and I'm thinking, this is, I don't know, and so we landed and got our car, drove home, and we walked into the house, and I'll never forget this. They had the biggest dinner laid out in our dining room. And it was better than anything we would have ever put together. My wife commented that she thought it was the first time we ever used our dining room, and it was a wonderful meal. And they must have been slaving on it like the whole day. But the importance of when we arrived was so that everything would be warm. And it was at that point I asked myself a fundamental question. how many people would do that? How many people would really, really do that? And that sticks in my mind as a lesson that we all have problems. Theirs just happened to be homelessness, but they have value just as much as any one of us. And we can't ever forget that.
So, John, with Rock of Hope, what's the best way someone that's like, oh my goodness, I really want to get involved with this, for them to just connect with you guys?
I would say send me an email, and my email address is John, John, Ripa, R-I-P as in Peter A, at sbcglobal.net. And tell me what you're thinking about. You know, what's God telling you to do? Where's your heart being touched? We have so many needs that I am quite sure that, you know, we can fulfill anybody's need, you know, to serve. Times are tough, and we are a 100% volunteer organization, and we are forever in need of volunteers. So,
and that's volunteers that want to work with the homeless directly, or previously homeless, because you guys are providing them a home, but also the maintenance on those homes, the remodeling of those homes. I mean, there's so much more that if you're one of those people that's like, I don't really want to work with people, I want to work with things. You got a place for them.
Yeah, I mean, you know, we have a person who works in our group, and well, she just doesn't like that interaction. And so she has a ton of things to do. She's, you know, just constantly busy. So there are many functions that we have that we desperately need help in that, you know, can be no interaction whatsoever, or you can have interaction on your own terms. So we're wide open and always need help, that's for sure.
Always need help. Well, thank you so much, John, for just sharing your story, your ministry, and your passion. And just having known you for all these years, it's just so amazing that you've had excuse after excuse to quit. Surgery after surgery and pain upon pain. I've seen you in some dark moments or whatever, but you've not given up on that dream, literally a dream that God put in your heart. And I mean, you've chased after it, and so many people have followed and been changed. So thank you so much for that.
Well, I got to be honest, you know, I've learned things that I am not good at, and I have eliminated those activities so that, you know, for example, I could spend more time with my grandson. So, you know, and that's something that I would say to anybody considering volunteering is make sure you know what you're comfortable with, what makes you tick, because if you're doing that, you will do it really well. And, you know, you never know what God's asking you to do.
Hey guys, I hope you enjoyed getting to hear John's story. It's one of a man who thought he was going one direction, but God had another plan for his life, and this second plan is much better than the first. Hope you're encouraged and you're chasing your God-given dream.